What's up, people? What's up, people? What's up, people? It is your boy MM2K of PNTS Network and the CloudDosage platform, back again with another CDO editorial. This is where members of the CloudDosage family will sit down from time to time and go over our thoughts and our takes and give our takes rather on the latest and greatest in cloud gaming news. And boy, oh boy, do we have a very interesting one for you today. I'm going to give my version of this in hopes that maybe my good brother Jack will do a follow-up, because I'm actually stealing this from him. This is actually his idea. I took his sandwich and I'm biting into it. So hopefully he'll snatch it back and he'll give you his perspective, because he birthed this today, and I want to thank him for that. But I think ultimately, even more than mine, I think his perspective in this in conversational format might be highly appreciated. With that being said, before we get into all that, do us a huge favor, y'all. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and click on that bell for the notifications. You know what I'm saying? We want to give a shout out to all the members too. Thank you, members, for everything that you do, because without you, we can't do our thing. And all of you members, we're going to be working back to bring back regular content to the platform. As you can see, we got our good brother Fla out there doing content. He did the latest GFN update and giving his takes on some of the latest and greatest on the CDO news front. There's other things that we're going to be doing as well as far as content is concerned for public consumption and for member consumption. So stay tuned. All right. So there's several parts I want to break this up into. And we're going to do several things. So I'm going to just talk about this concern and how Jack birthed this today. Then those are going to be broken up into certain segments. You know what I'm saying? Like how different players relate to this actual concern about, is cloud gaming suffering? That's today's video. Did I say that? Today's video is cloud gaming suffering? I think I put that up there. So we're going to break up the four elements in relation to that concern, and then lastly, I'm going to give my conclusion. Hopefully, it won't be the longest video, but I'm a liar, and I'm a big time, I'm a big time blabberer. But before we get into all that, can I do this for a second? Let's do this. So this is CloudDosage. I think the best place to get your cloud gaming news. Come here, check out the latest articles. Like I said, our GFN article is up and running as well, with all that great GFN Thursday news. And also check out my brother Fla as he talks about this week's news in cloud gaming and GFN, and gives his thoughts on it as well. See, what we do in our videos is we'll recap what's going on in the news, because we know a lot of y'all hooked on phonics didn't work for me. No, I'm just joking. A lot of y'all rather listen than read. Maybe you're at work and you can't have your phone in your hand, right? So you'll go read. You'll listen, That's what I used to do when I worked in the office. And I can do whatever I want when I can't do whatever I want. I can do mainly whatever I want because I work from home. But when I was in the office, I couldn't read a lot of articles. So I would, indulge in audio. For those that are like that, not only do you get everything that's in the article, but you'll also get the little sprinkle, the extra sprinkle on top. You'll get our commentary, our thoughts on that day's news. So definitely check out our articles. Check out the commentary that's in the videos associated to the articles, all that good stuff. You can't beat it there. Also, we would be remiss if we didn't remind you to check out, oh, look, that's the same video there. Check out CloudDosage and PNTS Network's other array of content here on pntsnetwork.com. So definitely check us out there, okay? You don't want to miss any of that, all right? So with that said, I will say this. Uh-oh, hold on, what's going on here? All right, so with all that said, I will bring you to today's actual video or actual commentary So our brother Jack the Slip put out a great video, a great Twitter post earlier today. As a matter of fact, let's go back here. Maybe I left here prematurely. Let's go back here and let's take a look at what Jack had to say. So Jack put out here, he retweeted a poll, which if you haven't taken this poll, I highly suggest that you do so. I'm going to say, as far as I'm concerned, I'm more optimistic about cloud gaming, and I'll tell you why. But when you look at this poll, but I answered for PNTS Network. When you look at this poll, 30% are more optimistic, but the majority, 42%, are less optimistic, and some are about the same. Lot of great comments right here about what's going on with cloud gaming and all that great stuff from different people within the community. So I would suggest to really check that out. It's a great conversation. That being said, Jack put out his own take on this. And he says, despite being very interested in cloud gaming, I have to admit I'm feeling just a bit less optimistic than a year ago. I think cloud gaming is facing an existential threat from the sheer capability being proven in mobile gaming, Steam Deck, Asus Ally, iPhone, Android, etc., especially when combined with the convenience of cloud-based save synchronization. I think GFN has pushed the boundary of cloud gaming fidelity forward with their 4080 blades. The UK CMA has provided headwinds by using cloud gaming as an excuse for punishing Microsoft. That's a very interesting take. I don't fall exactly there, but I do agree that where I think CMA put a spotlight on cloud gaming simply because of the fact that they use that as their basis to say, this deal can't go through as is. PlayStation might be a bright point for cloud gaming, but releasing the PlayStation Portal without cloud gaming support is a real head scratcher. I'm going to say it's more disappointing than a head scratcher, but I know why they did it. I don't agree with it, but I know why they did it, because they're simply trying to move to a product that focuses around you having to buy the PlayStation 5. Why is that? That's because for two things. Number one, the PlayStation 5 is uberly successful. You know what I mean? And they make money off of the PlayStation 5s being sold. They're not like Xbox, where in the first several years they're losing money. That's Xbox's case. I think the only time they ever made money off the console was like the last generation of Xbox 360 consoles. They might have made money off the Series S's. I mean, not the Series S's, the One S's, the last generation of One S's, but I doubt that. I think the only Xbox console to ever be in the black when sold, or be in the green, is the last generation of Xbox 360s, where they actually, made some money with those. With each one of those sold. Microsoft doesn't make money on the peripherals. That's PlayStation, because they're part of Sony. Sony makes a whole bunch of hardware, a bunch of stuff. They can negotiate prices and negotiate, what they call that, wholesale prices and things like that, based off of the relationships because of the other products that they have manufactured. It's easier for them to whip up cheaper production lines, things of that nature. So therefore, from what I understand, they're already making money off the PlayStation 5s, which is astounding, right? So why not continue to make money off the PlayStation 5 by making it a central point of their entertainment system, or getting involved in their ecosystem? That's what they're thinking. I'm not saying that's what I agree with. I think personally, if you go to cloud first gamers and make your platform accessible without the need of having a PlayStation 5. You ain't got to do Game Pass day and date stuff. You ain't got to do that, because I know that cannibalizes sales and it takes a lot of loss lead to manage something like that. And a company like PlayStation, that's not so easy for them to do. But I think not tying everything to the PlayStation would grant you even more success, because for every PlayStation console that you sell, okay, let's just say you make $50 off of them, or 25 to 50. We'll just say 50. I don't know the number, but for the sake of argument, let's just say you make $50 out of every console that you sell. You're only selling that console once to the household, maybe twice in some cases with a refresh, right? But you're selling one console a household. That household has to put up $400 or $500. A lot of households don't have that. There are a lot that do, but a lot more don't have that, or they don't want to risk that just to try out your experience. So that $50 roadblock, that's really a $400, $500 roadblock for consumers that are leery, that just don't want to try your product first before they make such an investment. You for that $50 that you're making one time, that cannibalizes the 70, 50 that you could be making multiple times with every game that you sell and make available via the cloud. So ultimately, I think you're throttling your own success, because if I was able to play the PlayStation games on the cloud and the cloud performance was great, then you're opening that capabilities to so many more families. People don't agree with me, or they may get mad when I say this. The reason why I think, there's two reasons why I think that proposal for Xbox may not have reached the estimations that they may have wanted it to reach. Number one, the xCloud performance isn't strong enough to be captured by the mainstream. Like when the mainstream tried the Xbox Series X upgrade in the server blades, they were turned off. When that was being announced and they gave it a shot, that was turned off. Now, granted, as far as capabilities, there may have been some incremental enhancements. People have spoke of that. I have noticed that in a few games. That being said, that's now being offset by the long wait times. But even if the long wait times weren't there, the updates are incremental. There are cloud first gamers that adore it and appreciate it, but the mainstream who have other options like consoles or whatever, the console or PC, it's not for them. They're not the demo that's going to accept that. The second problem is generally the lineup of games for the general consumer doesn't, it doesn't like to fire with the mainstream. You know what I mean? So you kind of got two things working against you at your current setup, to where I think PlayStation gamers are looking at Xbox and they're saying, this is why PlayStation doesn't do it. PlayStation doesn't do it because Xbox doesn't see success. Well, PlayStation, I don't think, would have the same issues that Xbox is having. Xbox, and then if you want to throw in the third thing, which is the ABK deal, I think that's the third one that a lot of us are negating to tie into all this. It's kind of hard for Microsoft to argue what they're arguing in the APK deal, but then going all full steam ahead and upgrading the Xbox Series X server blades. So until this is all etched in stone and inked, if they are going to make any significant upgrades, I don't foresee that happening until the APK deal is concluded, right? PlayStation doesn't have the PlayStation doesn't really have any of those problems. Now that I think about it, I was going to pull that back, but no. Number one, their current infrastructure, I think, is worse than xCloud, because their games are limited to 30 frames per second. But they now have a more capable process in beta. To where I think xCloud's problem is the whole console server in the sky. I'm not the biggest technical expert. I think that is a bottleneck. And, you know, we've heard from Tom Henderson and all that they went and really revamped. When I say they, I mean PlayStation really went and revamped their server infrastructure to where this thing performs excellent now. And it's giving you 4K. So it's doing it in 4K 60. So there's that. So then there's the infrastructure issues that they don't have. I think that they have a product now to where mainstream gamers would say, okay, this is something I could play. Secondly, they don't have the game problem. Like because of the accolades, people are dying to try PlayStation games. And if I know day and date, I can get Spider-Man 2 and play it on my dongle without having to buy a PlayStation. That one-time fee of $50, yes, PlayStation misses out on. But guess how many families would buy Spider-Man 2? Because they don't have that $50 paywall. And when I say $50, it's not accurate. It's a $50, it's a $400, $500 paywall that Sony at best is maybe getting $50 from this early in the game. So, yeah, it's not a real head scratcher. I get why they're doing it because their PlayStation 5 sales are so incredible and they love reporting those numbers. So if they create all these other, if they welcome all these other auxiliary functions, but yet put them behind the PlayStation console paywall, that's going to help push the console. I see where that's at, but I think overall your net return, you're throttling your net return. I just think that there are way more people out there that would equate to way more games being sold. We're not talking about subscription stuff. Screw that. I just think that there's way more people out there that would equate to way more games being sold if you simply didn't make your console a necessity in order to play your games in the cloud. And when I say your games, I mean your entire library. Play them in the cloud. Even if you were to, even if you were to do something to say, okay, cloud access, you have to pay the $17.99 a month for cloud access. So I pay $17.99 a month for cloud access, or I can buy it annually, whatever it is. And I have to still buy your games day and date. Wouldn't you make more money from that? By opening it up and making it more accessible to people than by forcing me to pay. Like if I'm a cloud first gamer, maybe $17 is a little steep for a monthly subscription. But if this is for PlayStation Plus, all the fantastic titles that you guys have in there, and access to purchase and play games a la carte, oh my God. You know what I'm saying? Like, there you go. So I'm not confused on why they do it. I just don't agree, and I think it's short-sighted. Maybe what they're thinking is they're saying, well, you know what? We know that the possibility is there. We're going to throttle it because right now, by the PlayStation doing more, we're still making more money and we're still satisfying our investors. let's not bring out the entire cash cow right now. Maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe they're okay with staggering it on purpose because they know if they need an extra injection of money or resources because the console ain't doing it anymore. Now we flip that switch and now we do add cloud access. Now, you know what I'm saying? Maybe that, I don't know, but I would just infuse that access right now. But to get to back to Jack's point, PlayStation might be the point, but it's a real head scratcher. All in all, it's been a real mixed bag of a year. Here's hoping for a breakout year ahead of us. And that was the concern. I don't know if I put that out there. That was the intro, the concern about cloud gaming and why it's it's had a bad year. I think that the reason why, and here's my response to that. I put a response out here. I said, interesting take as always, brother. I see past year more as a downplay and the unfortunate byproduct of Stadia's closure. I think it can be reversed by gaining mainstream gamers through mindshare. Or by gaining mainstream gamers mindshare through fidelity and performance, then expanding with bigger offerings than cloud can provide. Here's my thoughts on that. Let me explain that. I love the fidelity portion and the performance portion that cloud gaming, when fine-tuned in its best ways, can provide, but that's not the best that cloud can offer. It's the power of computing things in the cloud, the certain possibilities that are only created by cloud game computing, like we saw with Erin Hoffman-John, the department she was hitting up at Stadia, where they were, I forgot the name of the project, where they were working on the one project where, by from the power of the cloud, 10 people can make a game as big as WoW, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Big ideas like that, which are only capable in the clouds. That's what really will set cloud gaming apart from anything else. I continue on to say, we also need cloud providers to be more vigilant when their products are misrepresented in media. If this can be done while suiting the cloud first gamers' needs and expectations, then I think the trend can be reversed. Just my 2 cents. So what do I mean by that? I think if there's anything that we learned from Stadia, is that there were a lot of ignorant people writing a lot of things about video games, and the amount of ignorance that was out there in the media astounded me. That's why it was so big for me to be part of a publication to get something started to where representing the facts and fact finding was our focus, because there were a lot of people that are just putting out their conjecture and they simply haven't done their research, and they want to, as I've been saying recently, cast their subjectivity as objectivity. And I didn't realize how much I was being lied to, how misinformed I may have been in certain regards, until I saw that the puppeteers of that misinformation, they just were saying whatever was convenient for them in their publication, not necessarily the truth. So as we as cloud gamers, or more importantly so, these entities, when it comes to their products, as they see people go out there and say, oh, the latency in cloud gaming is bad, they don't have games. When they go out there and say this stuff, I think it's important for these publications to come out and say no. Like, it wouldn't be a bad idea. I would, if I'm Google Stadia, let's just say if Google was like, you know what, we decide not to close, but man, like, let's give one last effort to address the things that are hurting us. At the top of that list is how we deal with misinformation. Now, shout out to Shaka. That whole, and the irony of it, though, that I'm bringing this up, but the whole pushback that she gave to the one print that talked about there being a conference and Google Stadia being shut down and all this other stuff, which ended up being true. The irony is that was their best pushback, was against something that was true. But if I take that same energy and I apply it to stuff that isn't true, like if I do that, I mean, that was the ripple heard around the world with Stadia. And I think, and if that would have stuck, and they going into 2023 with the things that they had planned, I think we'd be talking about a different Stadia right now. A Stadia that's finally getting its respect. Especially, can you imagine if Stadia was still around when the CMA blocked the deal because of cloud gaming? The injection into cloud gaming altogether, let alone Stadia, would have been profound. And them getting games like what it looked like Need for Speed, looked like Callisto Protocol. What else did it look like they were getting? They were getting games like, Dead Island 2. And if the low charge porting, if that could have, made it easier to get games as GFN gets them, or close to that cadence, you know what I mean? We're talking about a different Stadia. But then what they were also doing is they were introducing bring your own game service, where they give you a digital, hard drive in the sky, games that you've already purchased. You kind of just simulate using their streaming technology and play them. And I think what that does is that creates a scenario where now you're introducing people to the tech. They just simply got to pay $9.99 to they got to be a Stadia Pro member. So now you're introducing people to the tech. And even though we want them to buy games natively off the platform, they're not going to do that unless they got a reason to try the tech. What else can they try the tech with? Well, if I can try it with games that I've already bought, cool, let me do that. Now that I've done that, now I can debunk. And now that I can check the performance and the fidelity, and now that I can concur, oh, this thing works. Now, when games start releasing natively on the platform with Stadia features, direct stream and whatever, then I'm going to say, you know what? Let me buy it on Stadia. So we had all these things that if they would have aligned properly, they really would have helped Stadia as far as really giving it a boost. But part of that process, I think, would have had to have been dealing with misinformation. Like I'm doing what they had Shaka do that one time, which was brilliant and made headwaves all through the news world. And then in addition to that, I'm putting out a newsletter. I'm putting out like maybe a weekly newsletter, talking about things and then saying, I know Stadia had something like that, but then, some Stadia myth stuff. I know we kind of did something like that over at the Numbers for Stadia show, but maybe you don't put names in there, but you dispel myths. It's like, just as it was brought to our attention that such and such was said. This is not true. Here's why. And I wouldn't address rumors about games and ongoings behind the scenes. With this part of the newsletter, I'm addressing capabilities. I'm addressing capabilities, and I'm just I'm just continuously putting that out there, shooting it down. Right? You got to be aggressive on that front, because you have a news media that is used to dedicated hardware. It's like currency to them. So because it's like currency, cloud gaming threatens to take away, the weight of that console. If PlayStation games go out in the cloud and they're 4K 60 capable, and the fidelity and the performance and the latency is great, that is going to have diminishing returns on the need of a console. It's not going to make the consoles go away, but the necessity of having a console diminishes. And if these publications use hardware, you giving us 5 PlayStations so we can review, if that currency is deflated, that's something that's going to make them panic. And that's what Stadia proposed, and that's why I feel like a lot of them went out with, as much as they did, with ignorance. It'd be different if they actually tried it and played it and told the truth about it, but were spinning negatives. I mean, spinning stuff is dishonest as well, but that at least is so many levels less than the flat out lies that they told about the platform. You got a lot of people that are just afraid or have serious agendas against cloud gaming being having a serious impact. You got to be prepared for that. But with all that said, there's just stuff going on. And I think that people don't realize how the impact of Stadia closing and the impact that xCloud, GFN, and other platforms are having in the question of, is cloud gaming suffering? So first, let's start with Stadia's closure. All right. When Stadia closed, by the time they announced their closure, it had become the de facto face of the success of cloud gaming. By de facto, it became the face of the success of cloud gaming. Because it was perceivably the boldest representation of it. It had no there was no dedicated gaming backup, none whatsoever. Everything was in the cloud. And that was so controversial. It was so controversial because the media made it so controversial instead of, again, educating themselves and then becoming a beacon of education to gamers. Even if they did have criticisms about it, instead of being a beacons of information, they just went in full panic mode. So due to just how partisan the conversations around cloud gaming and Stadia were, it became the de facto face of the success of cloud gaming. And when they closed the way that they did, and pretty much saying, you know what, we thank you for your help, but this was a mistake. I mean, this was a mistake. And, we believe in cloud gaming, but not enough to be in it. We'll support it, but we're like one of the richest companies in the world, and we don't even want to be involved in it. That whether it's fair or not, leaves a sting in the mouth of everybody, whether you're friend or foe of cloud gaming. So when when Stadia died, that sent cloud gaming several steps back. And particularly when Stadia The fact that this came shortly after, again, it was rumored that Stadia was closing down, but then it was swatted back by the social media team, only for it to be true. That had a negative impact, and I can tell you firsthand, to where people wouldn't stop their ridicule of Stadia, but they actually started to say, you know what, maybe this thing is going to stay around, and then maybe it's going to, it'll find its way. It's got to earn its wings, and it'll find its. People were starting to come to that fact. Again, the response from Shaka to the rumor at the time, I think, just started something that was sending ripples through the gaming community. Like, this thing, it's still the thing that we talk about, but instead of us believing that this is dead in the water, this might have a future. Just while the future's not now, let's dunk on it. That's that's an incredible step up. Believe it or not, as sad as it sounds, that's an incredible step up from where it was prior. And talking to after Stadia died, a lot of people tried to deal with the quote unquote trauma of that by getting past dealing with Stadia as quick as possible. People went to decide, okay, what is going to replace Stadia for me? And it did help that there was monetary kickback to those that did invest into the platform. Stadia was a problem as far as closing for so many gamers that, to quickly again get over the trauma, and then to get over the sheer panic of where am I going to go? Because the Stadia served a wing of cloud only gamers that just weren't tech enthusiasts, but this was the most feasible way, really the only feasible way for them to get into gaming was through Stadia. So it's like, now where we're going to go. And so people looked at two entities. They looked at all possible entities, but the two entities that rose to the top were GFN. And GFN kind of, in the mannerism that it was being mentioned in the cloud community versus Stadia, it kind of left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. And then Xbox, a lot of people were, while Stadia was around, they were down and they were like, we like xCloud's lineup, but xCloud just, when you're comparing it to Stadia, is just sad. So what people had to do is they had to say, okay, well, are we going to get over the sour taste that what's it called left? Or are we going to go and deal with the shortcomings of Xbox? And I feel like more people, I think it's like a 60-40 split in favor of Xbox. A lot of people have gone to Xbox. I think GFN is kind of closing into that gap because of the power of GFN Ultimate, but Xbox, I think, got the lion's share of those that were affected by Stadia's closure. Now, even though that's how we dealt with it within the cloud community, mainstream gamers just weren't trying to hear it. They definitely weren't checking for xCloud, and they didn't even want to hear, and that negatively impacted GFN, because even though you can argue like Xbox and xCloud had kind of stagnated as far as what they were putting into the, outside of lineups, what they were putting into the service to improve it, make it better, expand it, all that other stuff. Keystone was canceled. A la carte purchases were canceled. You know what I'm saying? All that stuff, right? If you look at who was really putting more, significantly more, into their product, GFN rises to the top. GFN, while all this was happening, GFN was really increasing the value and the capabilities of GeForce Now and GeForce Now Ultimate. And I think they were the most negatively impacted of those that remained, because while the other ones, may have had their issues, enough so to where people were like, well, are they going to stay around? GFN was still building significantly more than anyone else. GFN was still building. So if there was anybody negatively impacted by that, I think it was GFN the most, because I don't think they got the return that they deserve for their efforts. However, even though that's happened, again, things have started to turn around. So that's why I say it's more of like an unfortunate byproduct of Stadia's closure and more of a downplay than something more long-term and systemic. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, because of what happened to Stadia, the de facto face of cloud gaming, that turned gamers off, mainstream gamers, and those mainstream gamers are the ones that we need in order for this thing to excel. Because 1% cloud only gamers, that's not going to fly. It's not enough. I mean, growth amongst us is important in these early years where they're, just racking up the compound annual growth and they're just reinvesting in themselves. Is really not a revenue making, they're not really making revenue, but they're just, creating enough to where you can reinvest. But in order to be a full, serious, money-making venture, you need mainstream gamers, right? And then that was damaged with the closure of Stadia, the outreach to them. That being said, why do I have that? Let's talk about Xbox first. xCloud. Out of all the platforms, let's talk about xCloud. So let's talk about xCloud's whole situation here. xCloud's impact and how Xbox has been represented since Stadia's closure. I would say that Xbox probably has, like, GFN on its own is bringing forth some great games, and then we got, like today, we got Cyberpunk 2077's 2.0 update that is playable there, that you're not playing on xCloud or whatever, and you're playing nowhere near that performance. That being said, I think the more like excitable lineup comes from Xbox, right? And then when you couple that with the fact that you don't have to pay for the games a la carte, they just come with the service, that gives a significant amount of value to what's being offered. I think those were the pros for xCloud, and also for a cloud first gamer, they really, people talk about convenience. I never really got the convenience argument. I mean, I know, like, and for instance, Jack has talked about on numerous occasions, and we have various articles and editorials on CloudDosage where it speaks to some of the inconvenience that's experienced with GFN. I don't experience that now. Like with GFN, you might have like a game like Cyberpunk that, because it's, running off of what's going on in Steam. If you're playing on a touch screen, there might be that slight inconvenience of that one screen that you got to press that says play, because what happens is through GFN, it kind of like goes into big picture mode. So you may have some games where there's like this inconvenience middleman screen that's there. But for the most part, I press a game on Nvidia Geforce now. It goes to the game and starts up and it plays. The initial setup of a title on a touchscreen device might be cumbersome, to where xCloud, you're just waiting for that shuttle to go, and then you're right at the GUI for xCloud. But beyond the initial setup, I don't have any problems with GFN. And then it's not every initial setup where there's a problem with GFN. And then when you couple that in with the fact that, outside of the free tier for GFN, you're not seeing wait times like how you're seeing on xCloud now. So the whole convenience factor, I think, for xCloud is, I don't know if that's an argument chip anymore, but as far as affordability and lineup, I think are key things there. But so xCloud is, the pros with xCloud is that very affordable, great lineup, right? Has the best lineup in cloud gaming, the best and most accessible lineup in cloud gaming, I feel. All right. That being said, the technology part of it makes it, and the technology and the convenience part of it makes it a cloud only venture. Like, for as far as continuous gaming needs, the average gamer isn't going to use xCloud. They're not going to do it. For continuous gaming needs, they're not going to do it. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of gamers who have tried xCloud and said, oh, that was cute, and went about their business. That is a problem for the growth of cloud gaming, because we have to expand our footprint. Now, there is one silver lining that is presented in Xbox cloud gaming, but not through its delivery system alone. That is through the Samsung hub, where they have the gaming hub where you can fire up Xbox cloud gaming and play it through there, and there's like an AI upscale that improves some things and makes the experience better. I think that's an okay way to deal with xCloud, and puts it more on the plateau where it's closer to its peers all the way around, particularly when you talk about performance, you know what I'm saying, and fidelity, because that's key. I know a lot of people will be like, well, you know what? Performance and fidelity in other forms of media, or have, performance and loudness or, other measurements are not important in other forms of media. That's what makes it, but that's true, but that's what makes video games different. Like, you may see gamers go back and, play retro games, and try out the 8-bit whatever, but they don't want the atypical 8-bit presentation. What am I talking about? They don't want to be playing stuff in sub 480p. They still want that 1080p, that 1440p if they can get it in 6. Even the 8-bit art, they don't want it in the same resolution presentation. They want the character movements to be way more nuanced and improved, even though it's like in an 8-bit style. They want it to be way more nuanced and improved than could ever be capable in the 8-bit days. And they definitely don't want any sub 480i presentation. So fidelity and performance, unlike other forms of entertainment, are vital when it comes to games. Hence why we upgrade consoles. We upgrade consoles for increased performance and fidelity. If that's the case, then we would just still be making games on the Super Nintendo. Why get a Sega Saturn or anything like that? Now I know there's enhancements to maybe music players and things like that that do more interesting auxiliary functions, but fidelity is not an auxiliary function. Fidelity and performance is key. And now we've gotten to a point to where, all right, we're bumping up resolution with each new console. We got to bump up the graphics. That's fidelity. Resolution and graphics, that's fidelity. That's how it looks. Now we're getting to the point to where, okay, we don't want any jitters. It used to be we don't want a whole bunch of jitters or frame skips, to where now we don't want a bunch of jitters and frame skips to, we want 30 frames per second. So now we want 60 frames per second. Hell, people are saying now I can't do less than 100 frames per second. And they want 100 frames per second on consoles, which I'm not there yet, but no, I can't deal with less than 45 frames. And I am leery if you target anything less than 60. Right? Hold on one second. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So my issues with xCloud that I foresee, not just my personal issues, is that when we talk about the fidelity and performance quadrant here, that is the gap. That is the stopgap between xCloud and the average consumer. It just is. They have the lineup. I think they have a lineup for that an average gamer would say, "Oh, I'm interested in. Let's try this out for a very reasonable price." Why aren't people doing this in more droves? It's the performance. If Stadia had, let's put it like this. If Stadia had that lineup, and if Stadia Pro, I'll put it to you like this. If Stadia Pro would have maintained Stadia's performance, if Stadia Pro would have had Xbox's lineup, it would do significantly better. The problem with one of the self-inflicted problems, or the self-created problems rather with Stadia, I don't want to say self-inflicted like they had a choice to do otherwise and they didn't. But one of the self-created problems with Stadia is that people that even did that, the people that did even like the platform, they were worn out from the lack of content. And when I say lack of content, not just purely games, but games that people want to play. The games that would have brought mainstream gamers over just simply weren't on the platform at the cadence that they liked. That's why the load change porting tool was essential. Where you can argue that Xbox is getting a lot more of those titles, definitely more than Stadia Pro was. And Stadia Pro, I think, was a very good tool and a very good way to introduce gamers to the Stadia platform. But I mean, as far as like breaking through and grabbing the attention of the mainstream, yeah, definitely the games that are available via xCloud do the best job at that. But there's a certain level of performance. And again, let's not tie performance to, oh man, this has to be 4K 60. No, there's latency things, there's fuzziness, there's, pixelation and stuff to where even average gamers can see and they're like, I don't want to deal with this because I'm not used to this. This is going backwards fidelity wise. And gamers don't go backwards fidelity wise. Don't confuse the 8-bit retro gaming mantra in those that are enthused by the 8-bit retro style with actually going to 8-bit retro performance. They don't do that. People have collectibles. People do power up their old machines, but more likely than not for mainstream gamers, even those that are infused with the 8-bit retro style, they want to do it under current performance and fidelity outputs. It's being aired and it's being played at least at 720p, 1080p. I think 720p isn't even used now for mainstream gamers, but we'll say 1080p. They settle for 1080p, right? So performance is key. You can't go to a gamer and have the performance cliff be that far off from what they're used to. And that's why I think if it wasn't for the misinformation campaign that was out there by the media, if that didn't exist, I think that's why I believe that Stadia would have definitely enlightened more gamers, because yes, the lineup maybe wasn't the greatest at the time that it closed down, or the frequency or the cadence that would entice a mainstream gamer, but that itself was a byproduct of the lack of attention it was getting. If you don't have this fight to the top of the Stadia FUD campaign by the media, more people adopt it, more people play it, and they say, oh, this feels as good or plays as good, if not better, than my PlayStation 4 and my Xbox One. Why? Because it's playing games at 60 frames per second. So there's no drop off, really. Or there's no considerable perceivable drop off. So that's why the fidelity thing is so important. Well, then people hear that and they say, well, if that's the case, MM2K, then how come GFN isn't tearing it up? How come Geforce Now isn't selling, getting as much attention as PlayStation or Xbox, if that's the case, if it's all about fidelity? Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, Geforce Now is marketed and is created to fill a gap for PC gamers. So if I'm a PC gamer who has a certain game in mind where GFN's fidelity and performance would be key, I'm someone that's used to doing it natively and doesn't have a problem doing it natively anyway. And me building my PC is something that's key to me. It's not like, oh, this is a pain, I hate it. It's all part of the allure. It's all part of the hobbyism. So I don't have a problem with doing it anyway. GFN is a gap for those that did that but didn't want to have to do that don't want a game on consoles. So when you look at the fact that the type of performance and stuff that Geforce Now provides altogether, I would say less than 10% of consoles. Here, let's do this. Not 10%. Less than 10% of PC gamers have that capability. Steam hardware survey. Okay, let's look at the Steam hardware survey. Okay, so let's look at the CPU. Okay, so the average, or let's look at GPU. The average GPU is a 1650, right? So the majority of these games, the average GPU is a GTX 1650. the primary display resolution is 1080. So the type of performance that Geforce now offers, which is like a 2080 and above, is a less than 5% of the gaming populace even has that. So when it comes to, let's go look at okay, so Geforce Now gives you performance of like a 2080, right? I think, or no, a 2070. Let me see, how many people have a 2070? Jesus, less people have a 2070 than have a 2080. Let's just go with the 2080. Less than 0.4%, less than 0.5% rather, have a 2080. Less than 5% have a 2080. Let's look at what I have. I have a 3070. No, that's a 3070 laptop. Less than 3% have a 3070. Let's see if there's any 4 series cards. Okay, there's a 4060 laptop. Okay, less than 0.7% having a 4070. Less than 8%, a 0.8% rather, I'm sorry, have a 4090. So these are very small numbers of concurrent Steam users that are looking for the type of power that GFN provides. Do you understand? Now do you understand? So, number one, the type of PC gamer that is looking for that type of power normally has the means to get it, and it's part of their hobbyist nature anyway, to where automatically them going off the bat to say, oh, I need something to supplement that type of power. There's not a lot of them out there. Then you got to couple in with the fact that those that may be out there, they may have fallen victim to the negative noise around cloud gaming. Then you add to that the fact that performance is key, but when it comes to nuanced tech, if you want mainstream adoption, you got to have accessibility. And it's kind of hard when to gain that accessibility when the games that you have to play, you still got to pay for up front. So even if I'm interested, I'm like, oh man, that I'm hearing all these accolades about GeForce now, but man, I got to go get these games. Well, now that you have Game Pass embedded in that, that should bump it up, because if you already have Game Pass and then you're willing to try out Nvidia GeForce Now, you might be willing to make that sacrifice to say, okay, well, I just got to shell out a little bit more. But again, that kind of goes against the price narrative, because you got to take your Game Pass subscription or your PC Game Pass subscription, you know, and then add an additional $10 on top of that. Or you could do what MM2K does and add another $20 on top of that. So as great as Nvidia Geforce now is because of the fidelity, it's outperforming consoles. And it's the best way for me, in my opinion, to play games. Like I'm about to boot up Cyberpunk 2077's 2.0 update with all the bells and whistles, overdrive ray tracing, and I'm going to get 4K 60. And I get that for $20 a month. You can't beat that with a stick. That being said, that may not be a fiscally obtainable proposal for everybody to try something that they're not sure of yet. Because again, there's all that negative press. So when people say, oh, fidelity doesn't mean everything, because if fidelity meant everything, then everybody would be tearing up. You know, if with my GeForce Now subscription alone, it automatically included the Game Pass lineup, it would be doing gangbusters as well. If with my Nvidia GeForce Now subscription, the best games out there, not just the free-to-play games, but the best retail games out there were added to my subscription, then there you go. There you have it. Because it doesn't have the fidelity and performance problem that Xbox has, but it has the affordability or the accessibility concerns wiped away. Because now the games are embedded in the service. So there's pros and cons with both on why they're not seeing, you know, they're not really tapping into the mainstream saturation yet. And I would say Nvidia GeForce Now, they are working diligently to get around that, to where it sounds like at the moment Xbox is more or less like, we are who we are right now. These are the people that play us. We're at a lull. Yeah, I think Nvidia GeForce Now is consistently looking at, you know, they're not overly concerned with, but they're always looking at, okay, how can we fill up more of that gap? How can we extend our footprint to more of that gap? So with that said, then there's the others. There's Amazon Luna, Shadow, Boosteroid, all the other ones where, you know, when I look at Luna, Luna has great affordability. I'm grandfathered in at $6 a month. And it has great accessibility. I love it. And really Luna, you know, for me and many people that I talk to, again, has the fidelity and performance is better than xCloud. Really, it's very close to Stadia. Like when you look at that tier of cloud games, you know, not the super premier tier like Nvidia GeForce Now Ultimate that has the best performance and fidelity, but that standard tier, you know, that standard tier, I would consider, I would say Stadia's first, and then Luna is a close second. It's also smart that they make it part of Prime Gaming. They have select Luna games as part of Prime Gaming. I think that's a good deal. But with that said, there's not a lot being put into it. They did expand this year, and I think they did that to you know, strategically to make sure that they were on the positive side of these the APK deal. And you know, now that Xbox is like, in order for them to satisfy CMA, they're going to utilize Ubisoft. I think now that helps that, you know, but, and we'll see how that helps them. If they can sit there and say, well, as part of Amazon Prime, you know, you can play, you know, Call of Duty and they go and actually pay for the license of Call of Duty for 5 days, I think that would be great. That would help bring a lot of attention to the platform. I think the platform plays very well. That being said, the lineup is lackluster. It's very lackluster, and there's not a lot of advertisement around it. Like, I'm on my Fire TV all the time. I don't see a lot of talk behind what Luna is doing. It's like the marketing behind it, you know, the very little that they've had. Like the marketing behind Luna, it has its phases. It has, you know, you'll start seeing a bunch of tweets come out of nowhere, then all of a sudden they'll disappear for like a month or two. It's very peculiar, and there's a lack of consistency there. And then what you're seeing now is you're seeing you're seeing the purging of a lot of games off the platform. You're seeing so many to where people are like, you know what, is this platform going away? I don't think so. I just think that, you know, there's really just not a lot being put out there into it. Then there's Shadow. To me, Shadow is a great service. There's some complications there, but it just prices itself out of the market. Shadow's great. Boosteroid. I think Boosteroid is a great service to where they really work to get a lot of games on the platform, and they get a lot of cool games. Like they get a lot of games that the other platforms don't have. I'm just not a big fan of their performance and fidelity. They remind me of the PC-based version of xCloud to an extent. I'll say it's slightly better, but the fidelity and the performance, I'm not a big fan of. So all of these cloud platforms, they either have the Achilles heel issue that affects in one or two ways. One, the accessibility and affordability isn't there to tap into the mainstream, or the performance and fidelity isn't there. And I think when we have that platform that takes care of both, as well as provide the lineup, which several of them do, like, you know, Boosteroid has a fantastic lineup, GFN has a great lineup, and Game Pass has a fantastic lineup. And Shadow, it's hard for me to put Shadow because Shadow is very pricey. But when you look at those platforms, as far as the attention and the discussion and the upplay instead of downplay, that's the problem. All of them suffer from one of the two Achilles heel issues. When one can get it balanced to where their strengths are highlighted and their weaknesses are lessened enough to whet the appetite of the mainstream community, then you'll definitely see a turnaround. But I think you get there first. You gotta have, number one, you gotta have lineup. And then number two, I feel like you gotta have performance and fidelity. Then I think three, you gotta have a great price narrative. And I think I think the one that has all three of those at the best, that is really making the best leadway with the mainstream gamers, we're seeing it with Starfield, is Nvidia Geforce Now. Like when I hear the mainstream media talk about Nvidia Geforce Now, it is in polar opposite of how they talked about Stadia, which is what you want if you're a cloud streaming platform. So number one, so they have the support of the journalists and the media. They definitely have their support. Now part two is the accessibility and the affordability. Because if I'm a PC gamer, if I'm a console gamer, I'm hearing that, yeah, I can play GFN on my Xbox and get 60 frames per second. But why should I do it? And that's where I think a lot of entry fees, like, okay, sign up for GFN for 80% off your first month. That's where I think you do well. Sign up for GFN for 80% off your first month. You run those type of promotions. You run that promotion for like a month or two. And you run it, a month or two every year. A month or two every year. But yeah, I'm seeing some positivity in the realm of Nvidia Geforce Now, and Nvidia Geforce Now, as far as outreach and olive branch to the mainstream, they're carrying cloud gaming on their back, and that's a good thing, because even though, again, the benefits of cloud gaming, particularly from us cloud first gamers, isn't just about fidelity and performance, that again extends the olive branch to the cloud gamer. And that's what we want. To the mainstream gamer, and that's what we want. So that's my conclusion. My conclusion is, I think number one in that necessity to tap into the mainstream is fidelity and performance. We have to, your platform has to provide library. This is across the board. Library is number one. If you don't have the library, it's hard for you to even be in a discussion. Hence why, Amazon Luna does great with the Ubisoft titles, but outside of that, it's a real tough pill to swallow with them. But I'm mainly looking at GFN and xCloud. I want to throw Boosteroid in there as well, but their performance, So if I'm looking at first GFN, second xCloud, third Boosteroid, I'm saying, look at where your fidelity is at. Look at where your price is at. Along with, you got lineup, the strength, you got to have a lineup. Regardless if you have the strongest lineup or whatever, you got to have a lineup. That's first. Cloud gamers can't feel like they're losing out. And if you're not getting the overwhelming majority of the big ticket games that are coming out, then you're on a different tier. That's obtainable to the mainstream gamer. That's why Amazon Luna right now, until they get Call of Duty, I just can't. I love playing my Ubisoft games on them. For me, they are my second favorite after GFN, but I'm got to look beyond me for the mainstream gamer. They can't be in this discussion right now. You got to look at your strength and your weakness. Highlight your strength, whether it be performance and fidelity or accessibility and affordability. And if performance and fidelity is your strength, then you got to run promotions, effective promotions that deal with your accessibility and your affordability. Like I said, for instance, for Geforce Now, you get 80% off your first month. You run that promotion for 2 months, right? But if your performance needs help, but your affordability and your accessibility is good, that's fine. Okay. you could do things like, I would say first and foremost, your best bet is becoming part of the Samsung Game Hub or being available on LG, because those TVs have that, they have that AI upscaling and stuff like that. And that can help as well, and there's millions of people that have those TVs, but your issues are more systemic. There is no turn up the, turn up the juice for a month and turn it back down. No, yours is more systemic. You're going to have to really invest and really fight to get that fidelity and that performance up. So, and that's again more challenging. That's why I think it's better if you have the performance on lock versus necessarily having the affordability on lock, because you can always run promotions, hook people with your affordability, with your performance or whatever. But I feel like when affordability is your specialty, you will have the lion's share of your gamers will be cloud gamers. It'll be that 1%, but it really hamstrings you in your outreach to the other 99%. So, and those are my thoughts, and that's my conclusion, and that's it, y'all. Appreciate, holy cow, we went on for 2 hours and 24 minutes. Appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much for coming through. By this time, my game stream of Cyberpunk would have been out, so definitely check that out. All right. And with that said, I appreciate all of y'all. Till next time, have a wonderful gaming day. Peace.